St. Paul's understanding of God was challenged, and there was discourse between his pre-existing understanding of God and his new experience with Him. He began to really search for his own understanding of God, in which he could fully and wholeheartedly believe in. He wanted a God who he would be willing to sacrifice his life for, not just a theoretical God who was detached from his own life. In his search for God, Paul discovered many things about himself, faith, and life. Paul eventually found his own authentic God, his unique living God. There were 3 experiences from the road to Damascus. In the first one, Paul was freed from his assumptions of God. In the second one, he began interacting with a living God in his liberated state. In the third and final experience, he received knowledge about faith, salvation, life, and God. Every person has their own unique living God who will often challenge us and our comfortable way of living. Everyone's lives are different, so our experiences with God will all be different. You cannot sacrifice your life for a concept. We sacrifice ourselves for our unique relationship with God. Knowing the living God makes our lives more abundant and enjoyable. In our spiritual journey, we discover and learn new things, and one of them is knowing God. But today we will be talking about the subsection of knowing God, the living God. There are many aspects of understanding the living God, and one way is to challenge your assumptions. Many of us have assumptions about God from Sunday school, books, society, and our parents. Don't let these assumptions lead you astray in your journey. Experience the reality of God in a real and tangible way. Our understanding and knowledge of God shapes our life, including our morality, views, and lifestyle. Don't try to understand and label God, but be free from your assumptions. Our perception of God influences our relationship with Him. We assume that God is just a living being, but He is intertwined into our lives, and many things happen because of God, and He is always within and among us all. Another aspect is the movement of life. The living God is as dynamic as life is dynamic. God moves in our life, but we don't know where He comes from or where He is going. Knowing God is not contingent upon how much one knows about God. It is not about information or what happens in your brain, but rather your whole being. By viewing God as merely a canopy, we are static, settled, and secure. As we come to know God, movement is created in our life, and as we get to know the living God, our whole self begins to move toward the truth. We are fooled to believe that God is binded to rules and defined by rules, but rules do not define God. It is difficult to truly know the living God because God, by definition, is unknowable. He cannot be understood and contained within our knowledge, and no rule governs the movement of God. God made all the rules and laws, but He Himself is not bound by anything. He is free and beyond everything. Knowing God is not filling your brain with information, but experiencing Him with your whole existence. A real understanding of the living God shapes our relationship with Him and our life as well. So it is important to have a genuine understanding of the living God. When we come to know the living God, knowing Him becomes the most valuable thing in life. Meaning, purpose, direction, passion, abundance, hopefulness, joy, aliveness, and thankfulness are all fruits of getting to know the living God. It changes us internally, changes the way we perceive our lives and the way we experience our life. Real happiness is not fostered externally, but rather internally. And if we are happy inside, we can find ways to enjoy life regardless of our external circumstances. Eternal life is quality of life. In our lives, God is not silent. We silence Him. This is why Jesus came, to bring God back into our lives. In our modern world, we don't create space for the living God. We only have space for our own concept of God. Without the living God, we become corrupted with our own greed and intelligence. This is why we must restore the living God. In our journey, we will encounter both the hidden and revealed God. In our lives, God hides himself in some situations and reveals himself in others. Even when God is hidden, we must actively seek him out, like playing hide and seek. What is the point of hiding if nobody will seek you out? We often create God rather than searching for him, and we create idols because it is easier, simpler, and more convenient. We turn God into an idol when we impose upon him our own fixed perceptions, ideas, and images. We often create God in our image. This is turning God into an idol, as idols are the personification of what we want or dream. Idols are a version of God that we create to satisfy ourselves. We can't oppress others into following the God that only we uniquely experience. A counterfeit God creates false happiness within us, and our cerebral self cannot force our whole body to be happy based on concepts alone. Real happiness comes when the whole being is engaged and knows God. We must carefully and honestly examine what our heart is drawn to.